classroom. Today our discussion continues of a new Europe. And today we're talking about the future of Europe, which seems to be very, very interesting. My name is John. Back with me in the studio today we have Tara, Yvonne, and Kevin. Nice to have you all back, teachers.
Thank you.
And we've been discussing in our previous two programs the economy of Europe, the social changes in Europe, and we mentioned a couple, but I don't think we mentioned all of them by any means. And today we're going to look at page 34 in your April magazine and ask whether there may be a new future for Europe entirely. But before we look at today's lesson, let's review just a little bit. And I've noticed a few words in our first two lessons that I'd like to mention. Consolidation, converge, or convergence, and integration. Kevin, what do these words have in common? Consolidation, convergence, integration.
The idea of coming together.
All right, becoming one or becoming more closely bound together. And this is what the process is that's taking place in Europe. It's a process of consolidation, convergence, and integration. Tara, do you think everybody in Europe is happy about this process?
No, I don't think everyone is. I think a lot of people are, but some are skeptical. They aren't sure that this is a good thing.
And there's some argument and discussion going on within Europe as to what Europe's future should be. Some people have one idea, and other people have a different idea as to the direction Europe shall take. And let's just, again, by way of review, let's look on page 33, and you can see the map there of Europe. And as we mentioned earlier, the countries that belong to the Eurozone or Euroland have the lighter shading in the middle, and those include Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, and others. And then we see that there are four nations that belong to the European Union, but they have not joined Euroland. Kevin, which countries are those?
Those are the countries that are colored an orange color, and they're Greece, Sweden, Denmark, and the United Kingdom or Britain.
All right. And they each have their own reasons for staying out. We're going to learn a little bit more about that today. So let's turn now to page 34. We have the question, a new future. Now, our previous subtitles were a new economy and a new society, but without question marks. This one has a question mark, Kevin. Why?
Well, it seems that the future is not a for sure thing.
Right, we don't know what the future is going to be, so we'll have to wait and see. But we can discuss it and speculate and wonder what direction Europe's future will take. Tara, can you read the first paragraph for us, please, on page 34?
It seems generally agreed that the euro is but part of a larger economic and political process in Europe. There is much less agreement, however, as to how far to take that process. Euro-skeptic countries such as Britain, Sweden, and Denmark seem to feel it has already gone beyond reasonable limits. They have balked at surrendering their currencies in favor of the euro and are not likely to embrace further erosion of their national sovereignties.
All right, thank you. So what do people generally agree about, Kevin?
Well, they agree that the euro is but part, which means only part of a larger economic and political process. Yesterday, we talked about it. The euro is not an end in itself. It's not the ultimate goal. And it says that it's generally agreed, which means most people, but not everyone.
All right. And it's not only an economic process, it's also a political process, and that concerns some people. And there are things that people don't agree about. There is much less agreement, however, as to how far to take that process. What does that mean, Tara, how far to take the process?
Well, that means how much will these countries come together and work as one unit, and how much will they continue to govern themselves and have independence from each other?
Right. What will be the balance in future between national sovereignty and the power of the European government as it takes shape? Another way to think about how far to take that process might be in a geographical sense. How big should Europe become? And we see all of these countries in Eastern Europe on our map on page 33. They're not named, but most of those countries would like to join the economic union, the European Union, because they see advantages in being members. But the members have to ask themselves, how big do we want to become? Do we want to include poorer nations of Eastern Europe? Are we going to get in trouble with Russia if we get too close to their borders, and so on? So that is also a question of how far to take the process of European integration and growth. Well, there are some countries that are called Eurosceptic countries. Now, what does that mean, Kevin?
Well, a skeptic is a person who doesn't believe things that other people are telling them. In these countries such as Britain, Sweden, and Denmark, they're not so sure that this new currency, the euro, is such a good idea.
All right, and they're not only skeptical about the euro, they're skeptical about the whole process of continental integration, consolidation, and convergence. They're a little bit nervous about losing their sovereignty. Okay, in fact, they feel perhaps that the process has already gone too far. I remember Margaret Thatcher saying that she very strongly supported, she used to be the Prime Minister of England, that lady, they called her the Iron Lady, very strong person. She really agreed with the idea of a free trade zone in Europe, where the countries of Europe could trade with each other and have open trade. But when they started talking about a European government and a single currency, Margaret Thatcher said, no, we don't need that. We don't want that. Britain is a sovereign nation. We do not want to become part of the United States of Europe. She was a Eurosceptic. And she would, I'm sure if you asked her today, she would say, it's already gone too far. They've already done too much. This is not necessary. It's going to be harmful to the countries of Europe. It's gone beyond reasonable limits. And so what have these countries done, the Eurosceptic countries, Tara?
Well, it says they have balked at surrendering their currencies, which means that to balk at something, it's to be unwilling to agree with it, to refuse to agree with something, that they think it's wrong, it's unpleasant, and it's not a good idea. And they kind of put it down.
And Kevin, why are they worried about surrendering their currencies? Is that really what's going to happen? I thought that you can keep your own currency and just have the euro as well.
Well, they're just worried about this erosion of their national sovereignties, and erosion is a process of destruction.
Okay, and in fact, in the year 2002, July 1st, those national currencies will be gone. They will be surrendered completely. And after your currency is gone, it's going to be very hard to get it back. Once you're in, it's almost like a marriage that you can't get out of. You know, it's an agreement forever. It's a very big step for a country to take to decide we're going to be a part of this. It's a little bit frightening, don't you think, Tara?
I think it is. We mentioned on the very beginning of the article that this is a decisive step, that they're going one way and they can't really choose to turn back, because things will never be the same again. And I think that's something that we're seeing.
All right, so Britain, Sweden, and Denmark have said, no, we don't want to surrender our currencies in favor of the euro, give up our own currencies and choose the euro. And so if they're not willing to do that, at least so far, then they're not likely to go beyond that to whatever Europe has in mind after the euro, further erosion of national sovereignty. Kevin, what is erosion?
Well, if you think of a river running through a land, and the land, the dirt falling into the river, it's gradually falling away, and the river is maybe getting wider. So this is a process of destruction, or you're losing something.
When something gradually is worn away, eaten away, blown away by the wind or by water, we call that erosion. It's not suddenly all at once. It's a gradual process, as we've seen, step by step down this road. And I know the British especially are nervous. They're saying, yeah, Europe, today you're saying one currency. What are you going to say next year? One government? And then what's going to happen to us as a nation? We'll no longer be able to decide our own future. They're worried about that erosion of national sovereignty, the power to make their own decisions. I think they're right to be nervous about it. Yvonne, any comments about this paragraph?
好，我们回到应该是第9行，讲到这个 Eurosceptic。skeptical 就是对某件事抱怀疑的态度，那这边就是讲说对欧洲统一抱怀疑的态度，这些国家到13行 balked or to balk， 它原本是停止、终止做一件事，这边就是拒绝什么呢 ？To surrender their currencies， 就是拒绝放弃他们自己国家的货币，而采用欧元。到第16行 embrace 就是原本是拥抱的意思，在这边是欢迎的意思。然后同一行 erosion 是腐蚀或者是破坏。17行我们又再次的讲到这个 sovereignty， 它是一个在这个课程中很重要的一个字，就是一个国家的主权。
So here we've seen the viewpoint of the more skeptical countries, their concerns and their fears. On the other hand, there are some Europeans that are very excited about having national sovereignty eroded and having further integration. Let's read about that in the next paragraph, beginning in the first column and line 20. Kevin.
For more visionary Europeans, super statehood is Europe's obvious destiny. In the European Union, if the European Union is to take its rightful place in world affairs, they say, then it must speak with one voice and act with one purpose. In short, it needs a supernatural government that will consolidate Europe's fragmented approaches to defense, foreign policy, and other issues. The unacceptable alternative, they maintain, will be continuing dependence on America for security and endless paralysis on questions such as the Balkan crisis.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. So there are more visionary Europeans. What is a visionary person, Tara?
A visionary is someone who looks ahead into the future and sees the possibilities for change and for growth and into a new direction.
All right. Somebody who has a vision in their heart of what could be in the future. And what are these more visionary Europeans wanting to see, Kevin?
Well, they're seeing this super statehood or United States of Europe, and they think that this is the obvious destiny. This is what is going to happen.
All right. Now, a state is a country like France or Germany, and France, Germany, and Britain are strong and powerful states all by themselves. When you put them together into one big country, then you have a super state. In fact, the combined population of the countries in the European Union is greater than the population of the United States. And they project that the economies together would be more powerful than the economy of the United States as well. So we could say super statehood. And they say it's obvious. This is what Europe should be. It's our destiny. Why should we fight it? You know, it's natural. In fact, there's a slogan in Europe, at least there used to be years ago. They said, Europe, c'est naturel. It's the natural thing. Why argue against it? You look at the map. There, we're all together. Let's be together. Okay? And what are some of the reasons that they would like Europe to be integrated, Tara?
Well, they believe that if Europe will take, it says, its rightful place in world affairs, or to have the proper influence to be able to influence international relations and work with the world effectively, that it must speak with one voice and act with one purpose.
Okay, what's it doing now?
Right now, there are several individual voices. Just in this European Union, there's 15 different voices, each little country. And it says that for them to really have any effect, to have the respect and the weight of their ideas, that they have to speak and act together.
I think they feel that Europe deserves a certain place in world affairs. Europe deserves the place of a superstate. You know, it shouldn't be down in the third level. It should be in the first level, right there with the United States. Very important country in the world. So to take the place that it deserves, then it must speak with one voice. It's impossible to have a superstate with 15 different voices and 15 different purposes. They have to get their act together so that they act as one. Now, they have one currency. They're going to be doing economic things as one. Now they need to have one voice as well. And so what does that mean, Kevin, if you kind of go to the essence of what it means for Europe to speak as one and act as one? What do they need?
Well, in short, like you said, in essence, if you're going to speak with one voice, then you need to have a supranational government, one government that's over all of these smaller governments.
Now, does that mean they'll take the national governments away, Tara?
I think it means that they will be above these other national governments.
There'll be a new level of government. Supra means over or above. So this will be a level of government that is higher, more powerful, and in charge of the national governments in each country. And this supranational government will bring together or consolidate Europe's fragmented approaches to various issues. What's the problem when something's fragmented, Kevin?
Well, it means it's broken up. And so in Europe you have different ideas. One country thinks you should do this, another country thinks you should do the opposite. Well, then you have problems.
Okay, you can't really act, and we've seen this in Europe on certain issues. Europe is incapable of making a decision and following through because there is not agreement. There's disagreement about what Europe should do. There are fragmented approaches to defense issues, military issues, foreign policy, how Europe should deal with other countries, and other issues as well. And unless there is a supranational government speaking for all of Europe, making decisions for all of Europe as one, what's the alternative, Tara?
Well, the alternative is to continue being dependent on America for security on the United States for some of those areas.
Okay, continued dependence on America. Ooh, what a horrible thought for Europeans. You know, Europeans are proud people, and they don't really like the idea of having to depend on Americans for their security, to make decisions, and so on. I think they've been thankful for America. America saved Europe from Hitler and Germany. America saved Europe from Russia and communism. But now Europe thinks we're ready to be a superstate on our own. We don't really need America anymore. So that's one problem, continuing dependence on America. Does America speak with one voice and act with one purpose, Kevin?
Well, more so than Europe, anyway.
Right. I mean, there is one person in charge, and if he decides, along with his advisors, we're going to do something, like attack Iraq, then they do it. They don't have a huge argument that results in paralysis. But in Europe, there is a certain amount of paralysis on questions such as the Balkan crises. What is paralysis, Tara?
Paralysis means to not be able to move. Like when someone is paralyzed, they cannot move their legs or their arms.
All right, and so Europe faces this sometimes. There's a question, it involves Europe. The Balkan problems involve Europe, but the European governments can't seem to find common ground, a common approach to these problems. We see the word crisis in the plural here, crises. That's more than one crisis. And we see Balkan. Now, the Balkan area is those countries east of Italy. If you look on your map on page 33, you'll see Italy there near the bottom. And then there's a body of water to the east or to the right of Italy. That's the Adriatic Sea. Across the Adriatic Sea, there you see the Balkan Peninsula. A lot of little countries there that seem to spend a lot of time fighting each other and having civil wars and things. In fact, the First World War began in the Balkans. The Balkans has always been a troubled area, and the Europeans are very nervous about it. They'd like to have peace in the Balkans. They'd like to settle the issues, but they are in paralysis. It's hard for Europeans to act as one in the Balkans. And so if they had a single government making decisions, it would be easier.
No, I imagine there might be a student out there who is wondering if Balkan is related to our other vocabulary word that we taught earlier, to bulk.
Okay, what would you say?
I would say no. No connection, no relationship.
Coincidental, completely. That's a very good question, Kevin. Right, I don't think there's any connection at all. Although some of the Balkan countries have balked over various issues. We know that there was that terrible civil war in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We know that Yugoslavia and Croatia had a war. There was civil war in Croatia, and now there's a real serious problem in Kosovo, which is a part of Yugoslavia. All of these places are in the Balkans, very unstable, and the Europeans would like to do something about helping the situation there. Yvonne, any comments?
Yep， 我们回到中间这个 column 第6行，看到这个字 supranational， 我们这个字要非常注意，它没有拼错啊。有人告诉我说，它应该是拼 SUPE 啊，那个是不对的，因为这边 supra 这边是超越，在什么之上的意思，并不是超级大国的那个超级的意思，对不起。所以这个字呢，我们要解释成超越国家的啊，凌驾各国的。到第8行fragmented， 它这个本身是一个动词 to fragment， 就是使什么破碎，那这边就是用作一个形容词了，就是成为破碎的。然后11行 alternative 是另外的一个选择。到下面14行 paralysis， 它原本是麻痹的意思，这边就是好像是一个无解的问题，因为他们进退不得，不知道要怎么办好。15行 Balkan 就是巴尔干半岛的，这边这是指这几个国家。
Thanks, Yvonne. Now, before we go on to the last paragraph in the last column, let's listen to this.
Excuse me, I'd like to buy a newspaper. Here's my money.
Hey, what's this?
You know, it's a euro.
You can't use that money here in Britain.
Why not? This is Europe, isn't it? Why can't I spend the euro?
Because I'm a Euro skeptic, that's why.
What? But why?
You won't see me surrendering my currency in favor of the euro.
But don't you want to be a part of Euroland?
No! We've already gone beyond reasonable limits, and I refuse to embrace any further erosion of our national sovereignty.
Oh, come on. Be a visionary. Super statehood is Europe's obvious destiny. money.
Well, I'm not so sure I agree.
Don't you want a rightful place in world affairs? We must speak with one voice, with one purpose. In short, we need a supranational government.
And in short, you need real money, or you don't get your newspaper.
I expect probably the problem will be opposite. Britain will be knocking on the door of Euroland saying, come on, let's trade, let's do business, and the Euroland countries will say, sorry, you don't have the right currency. You come and join Euroland first, and then we can go on. Well, let's look at the final paragraph now. It says, erecting such a government would truly gut national sovereignty, especially among the smaller, weaker members of the EU. It is thus difficult to imagine a United States of Europe ever actually coming into being. Although old-style nationalism appears to be waning, it is far from dead. The bitter rivalries and struggles for dominance that have plagued Europe for centuries may yet flare up again, blocking the slow drive to European unity. All right. Well, Kevin, it says erecting such a government. What does erecting mean, and what such a government is it talking about?
To erect means to put something together or to build. And if you build a government, here meaning the supranational government, a government that is over these other European countries, then you would gut national sovereignty. And we talked about that before, taking away these individual countries' national sovereignty.
All right. In fact, there are already levels of supranational government. There is a European Parliament with elected members from every member of the EU. There's the European Commission, which makes decisions for all of Europe in certain areas, but not in defense and things of foreign affairs, things of that nature. But that government will get bigger. It will evolve. This word to gut, Tara, what does that make you think of when you hear to gut something?
Well, I first think of someone who's gone hunting and has an animal and they're going to gut it or take out the insides, the organs. All that makes it run and is important, gives it life.
Right. When you catch a fish or when you kill an animal, if you're a hunter, you need to gut it. You need to take out the things in the belly. You're not going to eat those things. And if you leave them inside the animal, they'll just make the meat bad. So you gut the animal, you take out the heart and the liver and the intestines and all these other things, and then you've just got meat and bones left, and you can cook that and do whatever you want to do with it. So to gut something means to take the most important part out. And if they had this government in Europe, it would gut the national sovereignty of the other countries. They'd no longer have sovereignty, really. They'd be like provinces or states in a larger federation. Especially the smaller members, the weaker members. Countries like France and Germany might have more power within the EU, but smaller countries like Belgium or Luxembourg would have very little to say about foreign policy or defense policy. All right? So it may be difficult then to imagine a United States of Europe ever actually coming into being, Kevin. For countries to agree to do this seems unimaginable, doesn't it?
Right. There would have to be a further evolution of people's thinking, because right now, the way people think in these countries, it's hard to imagine them giving up their sovereignty.
Right. And we have to admit that the old-style nationalism is waning. It seems to be getting weaker. When something wanes, it gets weaker. But it's far from dead. It's certainly not gone. There are large groups of people in France, Germany, and Britain who do not want a United States of Europe. They're fighting against it. And so the bitter rivalries and struggles for dominance may continue. They may flare up again. What does it mean when something flares up, Tara?
It means to suddenly come back. I think of a fire and you see the flames of fire shoot up. Maybe they get hot again. So it gets hot and it comes back. And usually it's used in a negative way, something bad.
The history of Europe is a history of wars among neighboring states. And this history, this heritage may flare up in our time. And it could block the slow drive to European unity. The Germans might decide, we don't want this anymore, forget it, we're going to go back to our mid-century method of taking other countries by force. And that would be the end of European unity. We will see. Yvonne?